So hi, Alan. We have an awful lot of parents, and some are married, divorced, living together. Does this make a big difference in the marital status when it comes to issues surrounding a child with additional needs? I'm talking financially now.
Yeah, big time, big time, big time. As you said, obviously we have a range of different, but I'm always trying to encourage parents. The marriage side of things, when you're married, it makes things so much easier going forward. And it's for a number of reasons, because also when you're trying to build a special needs trust, you're trying to get as much money in there as possible. But when you're married, you benefit from kind of tax advantages, such as you're able to pass on tax credits to each other. And obviously that makes it better. You can also claim additional tax credit like the home carers tax credit, not additional tax credit. That's a tax credit there. One of the parents isn't working outside the home. So we say one of the parents are maybe working part-time. For the part-time income, they don't earn over, say, 10,000 a year. Then the other spouse can claim an additional tax credit, maybe under the home carers tax credit. So just things like that. But the big, huge one is the one we all hate, is this capital acquisition tax. This, CAT is what they call it for short. That's the tax the government dig into when we all pass away, or when we try ever give a gift to anybody. That's the one that we all pay 33% on over our thresholds on that side.
Okay, so could you break down that capital acquisitions tax for me there, please?
Yeah, no, it's kind of complex enough. Again, your best everybody know if you're in, just kind of Google it, but I'll just kind of try and explain it there. When you're married, or in a civil partnership, like myself, I can, if I pass away or at any stage, I can pass anything to my wife and there's no tax to the government. There's no this 33%. And for all the world, I could be a multi-millionaire, which we all hope. I can pass on my yacht, no issue, that side of it. I can then pass, we say, assets to my children, and you have a threshold. It's a big threshold. It's like 335,000. So meaning if I pass like away and my house, which is not really, but we say if my house is worth, 600,000, two of my children could get 300,000 each, and they wouldn't pay any capital acquisition tax. Of course, anything over your band, or anything over 335,000, they would pay 33%. Or I could leave it to a niece or a nephew. So there again, that's a smaller band. That's like 32,500. Or I could leave it to another person. Okay. Now here's the thing that you have to know. See those bands, when you're cohabiting or living together and you're not married or in a civil partnership, you're on the last band. You're on the 16,250. Okay, so think about that now for a second. So if you're living together and you have a house, you have children, you have a child with additional needs, outside of it, when you pass away, anything that goes to your partner over 16,250, they'll pay 33% tax on everything over that. And that would be devastating. If you're trying to build a special needs trust, there's no way you can get a well-funded trust if that's kind of happening. And this is where I end up, saying to parents, you really need to kind of consider, I always say to parents, if you believe it or not believe in marriage, that's not the question here. What we're just talking about is when you're building a special needs trust, if you're not married, it is big time trouble and issues. And then we won't even get into, now I won't even get into, but this whole guardianship thing as well. There's like, legal guardian, is the dad automatically. So there's other complications as well that people need to consider if they wish to continue not on the kind of getting married status.
I don't think it's something a lot of people really know about, and if you have a child with additional needs there, Alan, and you leave money to, like, as you said, parent to child, is there any exemptions there because you have a child with additional needs?
No. Actually, remember again, if you leave anything, remember that threshold is for 335,000. So if you leave anything to your children, they have a large threshold. So you're okay. If you leave anything to your child with additional needs, remember now, if they're getting any means tested payment, like their disability allowance or medical card services, again, you probably will stop it dead in its track at that stage. So it's very important you don't leave anything direct. You leave as much as you can, but not directly to them. So that's slightly different. And that has different capital acquisition tax rules when we're talking about discretionary trusts and leaving it all through that side of it. So it's very important, one, that you do leave as much as you can to your child, leave it in through the trust, and your other children then, just to be aware, obviously they have their own thresholds, but they're quite large. That would only be very few families who would have that kind of issues where they have so much wealth that they have to do a lot of tax planning.
I know, but I would have parents there who ring me, and they might be farmers, or they may have had another house or that. And when they left something to their child and they have passed away, it's the siblings ring me,
Yeah,
and they don't seem to understand why the child, now all their like entitlements are lost. Okay. Did you ever come across that?
yeah, no. So what you're talking about there now is the minute, and we're talking about slightly different there now. We're talking about kind of, when you pass away, when you leave money directly to your child with additional needs, they then own that asset. So therefore, it parts form of their means. It's their, means. So therefore, when they're applying for their disability allowance or reviewed or anything like that, then that's all their assets. That way. So again, this is what we're talking about. On that scenario, we're talking about very much discretionary trust, very much passing it through a trust, especially needs will, so it's not directly with your child. And when you talk to farmers, I meet many farmers. This is a major thing as well with, farmers and people, they have assets. And again, trying to figure out and obviously speaking to them and saying, look, it's a valuable asset. And they'd often say, oh, I'm going to give it to my son or my daughter who's an interest and all that. And again, a lot of that has to be thought out very much, because your most valuable asset is probably your family home, or if you're a farmer, or you might have a business. And again, not giving your child a large proportion of that obviously is a big risk for the child. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, just practical reasons. Farmers would turn around and say, look, Alan, it's not practical for me to break up the farm, or I always want to keep it in the family. But again, an awful lot of consideration needs to be thought about when it comes to passing assets, from.
And isn't it lovely to hear those parents interested now, while they're still able to get it sorted for the child's future? You have to admire them.
You said earlier, very few people know about this. Why do very few people know about their marital status being so important? Because it doesn't matter until you pass away, and then the disaster happens, and then it's cringy, and then you find out that you owe the revenue thousands, you owe the revenue, and you'll have to send the family home or something to try and pay off this kind of debt and stuff. So again, this is why, so something like, hopefully now we've a lot of our families, if you have a child with additional needs, your marital status, in an ideal world, obviously we don't have an ideal world, would be to be married in the sense, and then you can pass your assets between each other without any issues. And of course, then when it goes down to your child with additional needs, the most will go down, the government will get very little of it then at that stage.
Okay, so I'd say when you tell parents all this information, you must get some strange reactions, Alan.
I don't know, I should be sponsored by, say, a hotel venue or something. The amount of proposals I've been involved in, honestly, is ridiculous. I think it's just, as you said, when people realize, they're always kind of, they just continue with their lives, but when they realize where the line they're standing on, they just go, oh, geez, we never knew. And they just go, like the registry office, just go into the registry, get the piece of paper, and I'd often get a text 10 weeks or 12 weeks later, we're now getting married, and it's kind of, you smile in the background, and it's nice. But as I said, but then that couple, then they just relax then, because everything's back to normal. Whatever happens, it's easy for the will. Funding the trust is much easier, and it all takes care of itself just because they have that piece of paper, to say that they're now married.
And I think, Alan, that's supposed to be the most unromantic thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
I swear. And actually, I'd be in these meetings, and I just finished with this. I'm in the meeting, and when I know they're not married, I have to tell them this information. And I do kind of go, oh, I hate saying this. And then I say it, and you just see the reactions between the couples. It's very funny. Because at times it's the wife, not the wife, it's the woman going, like kind of almost like, don't bring this up.
Yeah.
And I'm just going, I have to. And you can see their face, and they're looking at each other going, oh. But as I said, most of the time it's fine, because most of the time they understand, they'll do anything for their child. There's no issue. And as I said, getting the piece of paper is more, I suppose I say, what puts off a lot of people is this big expensive wedding type scenario. So again, registry office, get the piece of paper, and everybody's happy. And yes, I stopped there.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I'd be very disgusted after a consultation with you that someone asked me to marry them. I'd be very, very disgusted with that. But if it's the case where they're living together and don't really, either way, it's still the same, I'm sure they're happy then to hear all this.
Yeah, and as I said, the last thing you want now is a phone call from that surviving partner when they find out, and then the information is you cannot do anything. It is now too late. And now, so that hopefully, as I said, if you're married, stay married. If you're not married, that's kind of a way. as I say, then, you know, it is certain to consider. And civil partnerships have the same rights as marriage, so that's perfect as well.
Okay, well, Alan, that's great and been very informative. Thank you so much.
Talk soon, bye.